In her book, she says the White House was broken. This after 2 years along a president who wasn't housebroken. But she only realized this after she stopped getting paid to defend it. But like Jake Tapper's book, it's a new genre of Biden tell-alls that should be subtitled, "I had no idea because I'm severely retarded."
If you thought Karine Jean-Pierre had perfected the art of dodging questions with a binder and a smile, think again. Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly just turned that press room podium into a full-on comedy roast. Gutfeld was cracking jokes faster than she could flip through her notes, and Megyn was slicing through the spin like a buzzsaw on espresso. Meanwhile, Karine looked stunned, like someone had actually dared to ask a follow-up. So what did they say that left her talking points? In total meltdown? Oh, just wait.
You talk to the Megyn Kellys of the world, who have literally voted until this last election, which put me over the edge on voting more for Republicans. But literally now I've voted in 9 presidential elections. God, I'm getting old. And I voted, it was 4 and 4. 4 Dems, 4 Republican votes up until I voted for Trump again this last time. So it was 5 Republicans, 4 Dems. I've been a registered Democrat, I've been a registered Republican, and now I've been a registered independent for 17 years. That's what an actual political independent looks like. Not like somebody who worked for 2 Democrat administrations until they got the stank of desperation all over them, and she ran for the hills trying to pretend she knows what independence is.
If sarcasm were an Olympic event, Greg Gutfeld and Megyn Kelly would be gold medalists. This week, their focus was none other than Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary, who treats every question like a live grenade. Pull the pin, toss it back, and hope someone else takes the hit.
All those applications you gotta fill out. Would you think I meant vaginas? Ew. Disgusting people. But now everyone says she's incompetent and lazy. You know, after they called me racist for saying that. That's not why I'm racist. Nope.
Let's be real, Karine's press briefings have morphed into a strange kind of performance art, where directly answering a question seems off limits. Gutfeld, the undisputed king of cable news comedy, had an absolute field day. He treated her latest briefing like it was amateur improv night at a failing comedy club, only no one was laughing with her, just at her, repeatedly and louder each time.
But really, they're just jealous. These colleagues also played along with the hoax, saying that Joe was doing 75 one-arm push-ups while finishing the New York Times crossword puzzle all before breakfast. They're just pissed she beat them to the publisher's office and to the bank. I expect to see more of these books because of the lifeboats these rats will use to try and escape the shipwreck of the past 4 years. So KJP is now an independent, because apparently pretending to be apolitical sells better than admitting your last job was gaslighting America.
His barrage of mockery painted Karine as a tragicomic figure wandering aimlessly through the ruins of logic and coherence. Imagine someone trying to teach calculus while swatting away bees. That's the vibe she brought to the podium. And Greg? He cranked up the volume, slapped on a fedora labeled CEO of sarcasm, and poured gasoline on the verbal dumpster. Fire.
That's how bad the stink is when one of its worst offenders is fleeing this rancid armpit called the Democrat Party. So should we buy her book? Well, only if your family and friends have a sense of humor. It'll make a great gag gift. You know, like fake dog or rubber vomit. Only the stench here, it's...
Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly, who's mastered the art of smiling while verbally filleting her subject with 1,000 tiny paper cuts, took a more precise approach. If Greg brought the hammer, Megyn brought the scalpel and a microscope, zooming in on every absurdity Karine tried to pass off as serious commentary.
Put a book, and her fans are already sharpening their crayons. And it's just what we need, a tell-all from the woman who spent 2 years telling everyone that Joe just had a cold and not rigor mortis. If the title hadn't already been taken, it should be called Art of the Steal. KJP also says she's leaving the Democratic Party. I say God bless her. Not many people have the patience to wait in a line that long.
Megyn dissected Karine's performance like a lab pathologist examining a frog with 3 livers. She didn't just highlight the incompetence, she exposed the surreal theater of it all. If Karine were auditioning for a political reboot of Clueless, she nailed the part. One moment that sent Gutfeld into a frenzy was Karine's attempt to explain inflation as if it were a new TikTok trend. Greg, barely able to keep a straight face, introduced the press secretary's guide to financial fiction, a fantasy world where high prices are economic strength and the shrinking dollar is just summer slimming down. That's when he stopped pulling punches. Gutfeld even created an entire parody segment mimicking Karine's unique style of avoiding answers, complete with dramatic pauses, looping logic, and an uncanny knack for referencing everything but the actual question.
Karine Jean-Pierre reinventing herself as an independent. This from, it's everywhere, but this is just from the New York Post right up. That she claims she's no longer a Democrat. She's coming out with a book, a memoir, hyping, says the New York Post, a quote, broken Biden administration. They go on to say that it's a tell-all she's working on now, and it's going to be a look inside. Independent is the name of it. A look inside a broken White House, outside the party lines, due in October. Hachette, which is publishing it, says Jean-Pierre did not come to her decision to be an independent lightly.
Megyn, of course, went with a more polished takedown. Her critique was like an etiquette instructor explaining why eating soup with a fork should disqualify you from society. She rolled out a list of Karine's greatest hits, including classics like Let Me Circle Back, We're Working on That, and the all-time crowd favorite, The President Has Been Clear, a phrase now bordering on cosmic satire. By the time Megyn was finished, Karine had effectively tripped over her binder of talking points and fallen face first into public ridicule. No need to quote Megyn word for word, the tone said it all. Part disapproving teacher, part stand-up comic, all business. If competence were currency, Karine would be bankrupt, and Megyn was the bank demanding payment. But Gutfeld wasn't done. No way. He then rolled out what can only be described as a dramatic reenactment of a Karine Jean-Pierre briefing featuring a goldfish in a tiny blazer. The goldfish, surprisingly more articulate, more concise, and somehow better at dodging questions.
In this book, she may focus her ire on figures aside from Biden. Quote, she has served 2 American presidents, Obama and Biden. She takes us through the 3 weeks that led to Biden's abandoning his bid for a second term and the betrayal by the Democrat Party that led to his decision. The tease goes, and she's going to regale us with a hard-hitting yet hopeful critique defining what it means to be part of the growing percentage of our fractured electorate that is independent, why it can be worthwhile to carve a political space more loyal to personal beliefs than a party affiliation, and what questions you need to ask yourself to determine where you fit politically. You've got to be kidding.
Just in case anyone missed the punchlines, Greg kindly translated Karine's usual phrases into plain English. For example, we prioritize the American people became we prioritize not taking blame for anything. He might as well have held a decoder ring that turned bureaucratic nonsense into brutal honesty. Megyn, meanwhile, analyzed Karine's rare ability to string together 5 unrelated bullet points and still never answer the original question. She compared it to building IKEA furniture with instructions in Pig Latin and half the pieces replaced with bananas. And yet, Karine soldiers. On clip after clip, briefing after briefing with the blank optimism of someone either totally unaware or utterly indifferent. Greg quipped that her blazers seemed to be chosen by spinning a wheel labeled dystopian librarian and futuristic DMV manager. Megyn simply raised an eyebrow and remarked that when your outfit is more organized than your message, maybe it's time for a rethink. Then came the graphs. Greg loves props. He presented a chart clearly made in MS Paint tracking Karine's approval to answer ratio. It was just a flat line at 0, with brief spikes labeled answered something by accident.
When Republicans hate her, she's not in any position to be a connector of our 2-party system, and assuming she could be is just ego. It's so good. They're all ripping on her, some by name, saying how dumb she was, how she's a joke, and literally nobody's buying her ability to be an independent connector who somehow is going to heal the partisan breach. Stu, back to my original point when her soundbite was playing, of how those were all lies.
Megyn followed up with an elegant burn, likening Karine's communication style to a GPS that keeps saying recalculating even after your part. She even suggested that Karine might be the first press secretary actively making Americans less informed, basically an anti-information officer. This wasn't just a critique of briefings, it was a commentary on the art of intentional confusion. Greg said Karine was pioneering a whole new level of evasion. The kind of linguistic jazz even jazz musicians would find incoherent, Megyn added. That her delivery had the tempo of someone who remembered their talking points phonetically. She wondered aloud if we were witnessing history, the first AI press secretary prototype gone rogue. Even their facial expressions told stories. Greg mimicked Karine's odd blend of forced confidence and existential dread, like someone halfway through a sentence realizing they left the stove on. Megyn didn't need mimicry. She let the silence say everything, sipping tea like a queen. Watching a PowerPoint train wreck in slow motion.
We have to say goodbye to Karine Jean-Pierre. I'm sorry, guys, but she's going. It's like, this is the way it's gonna, it's the one sadness of Trump winning, because let's face it, we're gonna miss her a little bit. Like, I mean, I kind of missed her word salads. In fact, I'll start with the word salads just so you two will be feeling the pangs that I've been feeling. Here's a little montage of some of the best / worst of Karine Jean-Pierre at the podium.
It is hard for us to keep up with this president. What I see is a strong, resolute president. We're seeing these deep fakes, these manipulated videos.
By the way, used to make beer brewed here. It is used to make the brew beer here in this fire. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
At one point, Greg went full fantasy mode, imagining Karine running a restaurant. Your waiter will be with you shortly, he began, using Karine's infamous pacing. Once we've circled back on appetizer strategy, confirmed entree alignment with kitchen stakeholders, and completed a chef debrief, by the time dessert was mentioned, the diners had eaten their menus out of confusion. No one was fed, yet somehow, everyone left bloated with frustration and secondhand embarrassment.
Now, she realizes she was carrying water for a man whose brain was as wet as his pants. Remember, this is the same broad who stared America in the face and said this.
Comments were made in that report about that, obviously about his memory that we don't believe lives in reality. 80's the new 40, didn't you hear? He is as sharp as ever. They are cheap fakes video. They are done in bad faith. And it's not true, right? The president wasn't wandering.
Is anyone in the White House hiding information about the president's health or his ability to do the job day to day?
Absolutely not. He's the president of the United States. I can't even keep up with him.
Megyn jumped in like someone lighting fireworks indoors. She imagined Karine giving directions to a lost tourist. Well, you see, directions are a social construct. Left might imply westward motion, depending on your rotational axis. The tourist remained lost, but now they were also questioning maps, gravity, and maybe their own existence. Karine hadn't offered help. She'd opened a philosophical wormhole and locked the exit behind her. The best part? Neither Megyn nor Greg needed to shout. Greg used humor like a chainsaw at a ballet, loud, messy, and ruthlessly effective. He didn't just roast, he incinerated, leaving nothing but the smoking ruins of reason behind.
Sciences. I don't have anything. I don't have anything. I don't have anything. I don't have anything. I just don't have anything. I don't have anything. I don't have anything.
Okay, we could have kept going, because let's not forget when he thought that the dead congresswoman was alive. Where's Jackie? She was just top of mind. She was top of mind. That's what Karine Jean-Pierre tried to tell us. And the obsessive note reading, right? She could not do the job without reading for the first 2 years of it. She got a little better on that towards the end.
Megyn, ever composed, delivered her barbs with the elegance of a villain sipping champagne during a hostage standoff. Every word cut cleanly, Every smirk was surgical. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her satire was so sharp it left wounds that bled logic. By the time the segment ended, the temperature had dropped by 10 degrees and the screen was still steaming. This wasn't a political debate, it was a tag team roast, and Karine was less the opponent and more the main course. Gutfeld hurled pies, Megyn flung shade, and Karine? She kept spinning, perhaps thinking that dizziness counts as momentum. In.
I mean, of course, what she's referring to, Link, is the fact that she's black and she's a lesbian. Like, this is what the left celebrates. That's her history-making role that she hopes everybody will find inspirational. Like lesbian children were growing up all over the country thinking, I'm never going to be press secretary because I'm a lesbian. I mean, it's just so. What are we in 1950?
The world of political commentary. This wasn't a bloodbath, it was a well-catered satirical feast. And Karine Jean-Pierre was the reluctant guest of honor, or maybe just the entree. Greg and Megyn weren't being cruel, they were just having too much fun with how easy it was. Mocking Karine's briefings is like mocking someone who spales. Cat with a Q, it's not mean, it's instinct. And by the end, the audience wasn't just laughing, they were united in confusion. Because when watching a public official makes you feel like you're solving a cryptic crossword puzzle while being chased by a bear, something has clearly gone off the rails.